Aleksi is an architect from Tbilisi. He has lived in Milan for several years and had a chance to collaborate with Italian architectural interior design companies. He also was involved in the research of public spaces in Ahmedabad, India, and Milan. In Georgia, he is working with interior design and architectural studios on various scale projects. So he pursues architectural practice. And besides this, he was a tutor lecturer in the Free University of Tbilisi. And today he will tell us something about Tbilisi architecture in general. Aleksi?
Thank you very much. So let me share the screen. So you can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So let me share. Make it full screen. I'm gonna go on full view and on and off because I have many more slides. So sorry. Okay, let's go. So basically, I want to tell a short story, let's say, about Tbilisi. Small history of it, let's say, and several different time periods. I mean, obviously, I will start from the very beginning, but it's a huge topic, so we only have short time, so I'll be swift. So here on the map, you see the municipal borders of Tbilisi, which is the capital of our country, and this is more or less the topography of it. So before I start with the history, let's know where are we? I mean, topographically. This is the city, as you know, is oriented along the river, and it's surrounded by 5 mountains, which are basically the Tasmina, the holy mountain where we have the funicular, Tabori mountain, Mahata mountain where we have the main church now, Lotiki, and Vedzisi. So these are the 5 surrounding mountains, and in the valley below we have the city, and we can divide it in mainly, let's say, very simplified way in 3 parts: the central area and further developments during the Soviet period, I would say. So central area, which is core, is an old town, as you can see here. So, and the history starts with the so it's more or less 1,500 years old city. So in different sources, it starts from 350 AD, from 500 AD. So basically, it was a fortress, let's say, small fortification here, and then it was settled by mainly workers. Inside the fort, there was no settlement. And mainly workers were occupied by doing leather, let's say. So Tbilisi, since we have these mountains here, we have bodies of water, significant bodies of water, which is the main river, Twari, the very river, and it's Taupisis water, so-called, and many, it has 46 joints of small waters, and here you see the main body called Tbilisi Sea, which was done as a reservoir for drinking water. So why it was settled by leather workers? Because Tbilisi has in the city center, it has cavernous rocky landscape where we have hot springs there and sulfur waters, which is perfect for the leather manufacturing. Otherwise, you should bring the water, make fire, cut some trees, and so on. And it was already there. So these are the first, let's say, graphical representations, more or less, which starts in 1600s by visitors, French visitors. Depictions of the old town. Here you see the fortress area mainly, and the landscape as it was in Tbilisi. But before, let's say, Soviet Union, it was a really small settlement according to research. So starting like in 800s, we had like 20,000 population, from which major parts were Armenians, then Russians, then Georgians, Hebrews, Greeks. I mean, it was always more than a topographic landscape. It was a cultural landscape, and very diverse cultural landscape, which shrinks during Soviet time, as I suppose and I think. So here you can see basically very old photos taken from archive, one of the main streets. This was in 800s, late 800s. They began to develop the city's infrastructure. Obviously, besides water reservoirs and funicular, for instance, that we had. Wait, I'm gonna show you the. So this was the funicular built in the beginning of previous century, done by Austrians. So infrastructure was mainly developing, and the old quarters stayed more or less as they were. Sorry. And one point was also they developed these houses for kettles, killing the kettles, let's say, in the south part of the city. So basically here you can see the central area, more or less, where there were islands before, and now we don't have them anymore. So it was occupied by mills, and there was also one island which was covered by sawmills. So basically all of the time, starting from antiquity, it was city of workers with a major fortification on the mount. And there were a lot of guilds, let's say, in Georgia at the later time in 800s, when so it was, let's say, in 1700s it was devastated by an invasion, and then in 1799, more or less, the Russian division came, army, and we started to develop bit by bit. Prior to that, if you sum up the whole history of town, it will be like more than 20 times it was conquered and devastated by different forces. So plus minus, I would say 150 years in total of 1,500 years we had self-governance, let's say. So, and this cultural landscape started to suffer significantly after let's say development, the urban development. You see now here the old pictures. There were a lot of bridges, a lot of basically there was one fortification, a lot of churches, and a lot of bridges, and typology wise, it had a very diverse landscape. So to say, this is the very central quarter where we had sulfur baths, where we have it now as well. So in this area, for instance, so there was a waterfall. There was one joint to the main river, which came from the southern part. Let me show you. So from this part, okay, the water flew into the city, and it was a gorge, let's say, a small canyon, and settled by old type of houses. And the people used to wash their clothes there and so on. But then after it was covered, and very many areas in Tbilisi were covered. I mean, the river areas were covered during the Soviet era. This particular case, it got covered because there was a flood in the 50s, which killed a lot of people in the bus. So, but during previous governments, fortunately, they reopened it, and so more or less we have the authentic picture in this quarter. So this is also the old peak of a central quarter, the rise towards botanical garden near the fortress, and this is the real area in front of Presidential Palace right now, there was an island which no more exists, and this you can see the mills and different. Here were different workshops, and they were selling the flour and bread and so on. And yeah, you see that the city had an access to bodies of water, which is restricted now, and it's a pity. So also let's say 1921, when the Soviets came, the pre-period for that, a lot of hotels were opened and were functioning freely, and we had a lot of let's say non-Georgian residents. As I said, we had 500 Italian families, we had English families, we had, so it was a really diverse culture, let's say. So these unions of workers, what they represented, it was called, from Persian, it was called hamkari. Ham means the union, kari means doing something. Henceforth, the karkhana, which is the factory, research of eggs factories was done by Mo, as you know. So that all comes from Persian influence, and the unions, they had a head guy which was called Ustabash, and then the following people in ranks, and all of the main parts of the core of the old city was covered in workshops and selling areas and small shops. And it was always the image of the city, let's say, and obviously the markets, a lot of markets which we had, and the culture of bus, the so-called bus that we had, and it still carries on. But previously it was separate, like it was governed by government, the bus, it was separate for women and men. Now it's all changed, and they're privately owned bus as well. So you can see some of the shots of old town and old people, basically merchants, people who brought waters, drinking waters or teas as well. So this, now what was before 17th century, the city was, as I said, obliterated, completely in ruins. So before that, even today's old town, that we call old town, is renewed. I mean, considerably, not like brand new construction, but after 17th century, they did it from scratch. So before 17th century, as we know, basically we had this typology of houses with terraces all around the center, the mountain with the fortress. And the basic key of it is the terrace of one house constitutes the roof of another house, and there were green roofs and covered with earth and so on, with planting. And the second type, I would say notable type, was this darbazi, the dome type of houses, which there are still some examples in Old Town and in Avlabari on left bank even. So this was basically like before the situation before Sovietization, I would say. Now after that, starting from 1917 and 21, we had a really tough time, let's say, holding our grounds against the Red Army, but finally we became part of Soviet Union. So there is a big research done by Soviets starting from 1913, ended in 1921. That there is a quite good research showing everything: demographics, geology, temperatures. Like it ends with even the specific craftsmen and their prices for services and so on and so on. So they had everything prepared. I mean, the research done. And they started to develop, let's say, develop city in a new way right away, and with the big steps. Let's say one of it was making the river banks, which unfortunately, this is the screen of pouring the way at the river bank. So it was non-existent, as you know. In the previous, in historic context, we always had an access to the river, and it flew freely in the city, and we had flooding periods and so on and so on. So it was closer to society, let's say, the city. And in Soviet times, they started to make the banks define the river and cover a lot of areas. They covered two islands that you could see on the map that I initially showed you, which are not existent anymore. So obviously, the big chunks of societal structure suffered by it. So you see here the main street in the city, which now is Gustav Valley, the parliament building, and before there was I'm sorry, I should find there was a church of Alexander Nevsky in place of, so okay, I'm going to turn back. There was a big cathedral of Alexander Nevsky. Previously it was a Jewish cathedral coming from Jerusalem, let's say, and we always had a representation from Jerusalem in our country. We also had many mosques prior to Sovietization, let's say. Sorry, no, yes. So and the place here was instead of this building, there was a big church cathedral. Which was demolished in favor of doing the parliament, and this parliament was constructed from let's say 1933 in two stages. Like this front side was added later, the back side was constructed in 1933. This side was finished in 1953, and it was constructed and designed, let's say, by Viktor Kokorin, Soviet architect, and Georgi Lezhava, local architect. Yes, here you see now prior to making a road for vehicles here, you clearly see the access the houses had to the river, the district had to the river, but now it's all covered. This is one shot evidentiating this access, and now, if you imagine the societal structure, let's say, people who lived here, and nowadays it's full of just cars, and this is the section of that area. We call it now Dry Bridge. It's everything here, including the cellars, which were serving as storages, and even wine cellars in some cases in upper districts. Everything now is closed off. And this was one of the newer developments, let's say. This is the theater building on Gustav Valley. We also have a house from very early on, from around 1851, but then it was destroyed in 1871, if I remember correctly, in an earthquake, and then it was rebuilt, and now it was also rebuilt in our century. Reconstructed. Let's say it was built by a German architect, Schrotter, Gottlieb Schrotter was his name, and this theater, it was initiated, let's say, in 1887, then that early, it was designed by Tatishev and Sienkiewicz, if I remember correctly. They were serving at Tbilisi City Hall as an architect, and had many projects around the city in their time. So here now you let's say clearly see the division between the old town and some newly started developments here, and the river is still more or less not intact, but not all the banks are completed. And now you will see, let's speak about in the urban development, in the housing development. So basically, even now, if you have a stroll around the city, you will see all the layers of different times in the city. So this is one of the more notable during Stalin's governance. He had his own vision, let's say, how to construct and how to make architecture, and this is one of the houses on the left bank, still having some program on the river, but today it's completely different story, but the building remains more or less as it is with some additions to it. And the second one was this. So here, somewhere here is your area, I think now that you are designing in the courtyard of a library. So all this small mountain. Hello. This whole mountain was a recreational area, and this house was constructed, I think, finished in 1937 or something, 1937, by Mikhail Kalashnikov. It was designed with a huge footprint of 2,400 more or less square meters, and it was considered as one of the, let's say, fancy, luxurious houses in the town. By the way, also in this area, there were today it's Hero Square. This is the old circus building, and this is the bridge to the left bank. Here also there is a joining of 3 rivers, which was covered during the Soviet regime, urbanization. Here it's already later development. It was a geological university, and it was a huge recreational area, and today there are like just office high-rises, but it's not because of Soviet time architecture. And then yeah, so this is the old map from 1924. As you can see, this covers only the city center. This is Sabutalo, which is a new development. It was added in like starting from 50s, let's say, after war, when the housing when they started to think about building more houses. And these are the 2 islands. So this was the island when I showed you currently dry bridge area. It was called Magatov Island, and it was covered totally in sawmills and productions of different workers. And this one was in North Tajala, and today the river flows like this, and it is joined to the city. The branch here is covered, so here you can see the bigger map of it. And then yeah, so after the Stalinistic period, let's say, of these classical shapes, which basically serve for propaganda of how great Soviet Union is, and in returning to these expressive shapes and forms, then came the time of real, let's say, mass construction, when houses were had to be constructed fast and in a good way, proper way, as they thought. But in some cases, they had, let's say, 8 centimeter external walls, and the quality suffered as a result because of that. Also, oh, sorry. I think I had the video here. Why can't I exit the full screen? Okay. Sorry. So it's okay. I had a video here how they were constructing some of the houses with concrete panels.
Alex, you can send the link in the message chat here for the video, and maybe everyone can see it
After.
But
Later.
the link is here. I just can't follow it actually. Right? Yes. So I'm sorry, my computer is jamming. Okay, how to send the link? Anyways, so it was just to show the social practice of workers. I mean, how they behaved during the breaks and so on. So here you can see the massive part near the largest body of water, which is a reservoir for drinking water for Tbilisi, so which is called Tbilisi Sea, and all these houses. Actually, also I would like to mention the micro rayons, let's say micro districts, which started to pop up, let's say, and which is taken from the Dutch concept, let's say, in Netherlands. Let me finish with this lecture, and I'll show you later what I mean. So these are the new parts, let's say, on the left bank. So for left bank of Tbilisi, I forgot to measure. It was completely planned, like not evolved through time during like beginning of 1800s. It was settled by German people, migrants, let's say, and they started to get foothold in Russian Empire. At the time, we were part of Russian Empire, and they developed the whole left bank. And even today, you can see there's remnants of this courtyard, organized type of orthogonal street grid and so on. So more or less preserved the structure of original pattern, let's say. And then we had now, like several years ago, we had let's say the qualification of this portion of the left bank, which totally gentrifies the area, if I'm as I think. So here you have some images of new constructions, and let's say also about the green areas. So parks, we had a lot of green areas before. As you saw in the very old images and the drawings, there were not as much trees as you see them now, but it was even more in the beginning of 20th century. We had like more than 130 square meters per person in the city. The whole Mount Tatsminda was planted artificially, let's say. The yards which were on the left bank were preserved at the time, and now they're shrunk to like 10% of actual size. And this is the one of the biggest, let's say, public green areas we have today, which is Rocket Park. Initially it was 110 hectares, and unfortunately now it's like 19 hectares, but we still have the botanical garden, which is near the fortress, Narikala fortress, which was previously regarded as fortress gardens. And it's more or less the same size, 140 hectares, if I remember correctly. So, and then basically I have some images of more or less notable edifices, let's say, in Tbilisi. I bet you might all know this building, which is now used as the headquarters of Bank of Georgia. The building was constructed by Godi, and at the time it was real, let's say, marvel of architecture, which still is. Many people associated with Lisitsky's researches and so on, but I think this is the pure local concept and architecture that fits. During the also construction of the housings with certain like methods with panels and so on. This was one of the notable interventions in 75. You can see it was done by Javakhishvili and Darishvili, local architects. They introduced a bridge, let's say, to connect the, we have a hard, difficult landscape all around the city, and at the on top of Sabutalo, the newer district, which was finished in the 60s, the plateaus, let's say, were organized and done with this type of houses. And then there were obviously some Soviet era remnants which are demolished now, which were done for ritualistic purposes. You will see the archaeology museum, which was done by Javakhishvili, an amazing architect, in my view. You can see like modernistic, I would say, or brutalistic, more or less, buildings. So we have this poured all over the town, intertwined with this old architecture as well as the new, let's say, post-modern, which I don't discuss in this lecture. This is one of the very notable buildings, which was the ritual palace. How should I say it in English? The wedding palace, designed by George Bernaze, which was called, if you research this building, you will find very, very nice information about it, how the typology is progressing with this and so on, Georgian typology. And George Bernaze was deemed as a John Buzier, let's say, in the professional circles for his accomplishments. And yeah, there's a couple of more monuments, and that's more or less it. I mean, I have a lot more images which would describe the social status or social state of people in old Tbilisi, but I think it requires a lot more dedication on my part and time to show you the proper lecture on this topic. So hopefully everything was clear. And okay. Also, I just wanted to show you one more thing about the so I had this lecture for the students in Uni, but let me show you what I was speaking about, the micro districts, how they came to be in Tbilisi, in Russia basically. So these are all the buildings in London. Wait. So yes, if you're not familiar with Yab Bakema, please take a note. So on the researches done by Yab Bakema, as a result, we now have the micro districts, microrayons, as they're called in Georgia and in Russia. And this was all about having certain type of arrangement within which you had a reach to all the commodities. And to me, the one of the good concepts which was manifested in Georgia when they were, during Soviet time, they were assigning you the flat per resident and according to different criteria. Then these drawings prior done by Bakema shows the turnover, the rotation of families according to different stages of their lives in the living spaces. So yeah, and then in the end, I would say, since the city is not only its urban fabric, not only topography, but a collective of all of our senses and collective experience of all our senses, we should all maybe think about what do we have to tackle with today. So these last two peaks are done lately, taken last year. So this is the image, actual image of our city, and I didn't have time to expand on it, but the environment that we get because of these chaotic developments is very stressful by many means, and it's not always highlighted in any research or something, not evidentiated. It's stressing on a subconscious level, let's say. So thank you all. This was basically my presentation as a short bio of Tbilisi, and hope everything was clear and informative. Thank you.
Thank you, Aleksi. I think it was very interesting,
very
not
much.
only for foreigner students, but even for Georgians, as you showed very pictures from archive and how it was developed. And thank you very much.
I mean, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Okay, now we can have a short discussion about the two presentations. Someone wants to add something, to ask something. Everybody's so silent. I was watching the topography of the city, and actually it's very, I mean, it's because Skopje is also surrounded by mountains, and also there is a main river, Vardar, and mainly the city goes parallel to this river. And I've seen that your city too goes parallel and is kind of longitudinal city, no? Am I
Yes,
correct?
exactly. I saw, actually, I took a look. I never had a chance to study anything about Skopje, but obviously I had a look yesterday, so I discovered a lot of similarities, even in the historical scenography of both cities. I mean,
but you mentioned 1,000 years ago. Is that which period? I mean, what? Because here there was like Byzantium. What was Byzantium time? What was
so,
the?
In our, like in the very beginning, as I see it, like 350 AD, there was a small fortress, part of a Persian Empire.
A Persian, okay.
Yes, and well, we don't like to see it that way, but it was actually like a small fort to oversee the areas in the Kartli region, in the Caucasus region, and obviously it was ruled by Mirza from Persia. Then it's developed bit by bit, and through its history, Tbilisi's history, I mean, we had like 25, 26 different societies ruling Tbilisi. As I said, self-governance was maximum 100 years if you sum it up. So we have all the other influence from all the other cultures and so on.
But why so many foreigners? Like there was something like about trading, or what was the reason there were so many foreigners?
Yes, so obviously through time it developed as a main hub on the trading route from Asia to Europe. We have a lot of,
From where? From, is it connected with Silk or no? Silk Road? Or? Okay.
Obviously. So we had a lot of caravans.
Because of the Silk Road, it was very much connected to Asia and Europe. Sorry for interrupting.
No. So, and also because of controlling this area gave you the whole control of the whole region. It was always a, let's say, desirable spot to be in charge of. So we had,
yes, the housing on the river have a little bit Asian architecture, no? Am I like
yes, obviously, as I said, in 17th century it was totally destroyed during an invasion. We had I don't know, maybe 50% of general population wiped out. Everything was destroyed. The king's palace, which was previously there, was destroyed, and then they started to rebuild it, and now it's really similar. If you go to Iran, for instance, in I don't know, choose any city with this wooden balconies, houses built for ventilation, and so on and so on. It's really similar, and we have a great influence of this, also with the tipped arches and so on.
Are they architects who started to like kind of reuse this element in contemporary architecture?
Well, this is what I am actually striving for, and I've not seen much of the progression of Georgian typologies, let's say, except at Jorbenaze that I showed you. Maybe also in Bostanashvili's work there were. But for me, it's very difficult to point out like a specific architect which would have this as a research or aim or anything like this.
Because I've seen from some projects from Iran that they started like doing something wooden on the facades, and it's very interesting how they redo this language but in totally contemporary way. So I think it has a lot of potential. And my last question would be about the Soviet architecture. Is like, were they local architects who were doing it, or were they kind of international Russian, Ukrainians I mean, architects from.
There was no, let's say, nationality during Soviet Union. So also, obviously, for the architects, not only the social culture suffered, but also professional groups were influenced by this. So all of the projects like Ozerov, there was an architect, constructed like wine factory, main stuff, main buildings were all designed by Russian, Ukrainian, I mean, lots of different architects, not necessarily Georgian. Because it was considered as the same country for everyone.
And how is now the feeling of people about these buildings? I mean, of the general masses, how do they?
Well, general masses, as I see, they see the whole period as necessarily a bad thing, but I don't think so. And in some, I won't generalize about speaking about people, but there's like one part which thinks that it's a positive event that happened these 75 years of being Soviet, and there's a side of the population who thinks it's absolutely everything about this negative. So personally, for me, it's obviously positive also by means of architecture, because now we have it's much more diverse and richer, our city, let's say.
Thank you. I hope that next year we can come to see these buildings and you will help us do the tour. Yes.
I'll do my best.
Yes.
Looking forward to it.
Yes. Okay. Someone else wants to add something, comment, ask?
I would like to say something. Aleksi, looking at your presentation, I find a lot of common things, like the buildings and the spaces that you were showing us through the pictures. Kind of reminds me on our pictures in Old Bazaar that we can find also in Skopje as well as in Bitola. And also the other pictures that you were showing us, like how the city started changing after the Soviet Union come in your, influence your city. It's kindly the same plan that we have, like when we start building like Karpush, like all these like longitudinal buildings. So our topic is like what we have in common. So I find a lot of common things like the buildings and all the stuff.
Yeah, obviously there is a lot of things in common. As you mentioned, for the bazaars, I mean, we also had Ottomans here, but not only Ottomans, but Seljuk Turks as well. So, I mean, the markets are very deeply intertwined in our culture. In Soviet times, I have the images, I just can't show them. It's so many, like the market shifted to more organized and it became something part of interior building of architecture, let's say. Previously, it was everything outdoors, more or less, and less it was self-organized, let's say. Now, what's the most common thing I would say is the problems with the vehicles, with transportation that started to show up after urbanization, and it's a long story connected to Siam as well and the Corbusier and everything. But basically, the scale of, in our case, in Georgia's case, the scale is absolutely astounding. I mean, out of context of Soviet time constructions, and it has many references. I can compare it to many things, but it is a huge problem of that shrinked the diversity of societies when the people began to migrate from mountain regions and so on. Like the city transformed really fast, and it continues to transform now as well. But the main issue would be that the transportation, that all of the streets were lended to cars, let's say, at the time. And now, for us, it's the chaotic development and chaotic growth. I didn't even speak about sprawl or constructing a new residential multifamily blocks or something like this. But many ways, I'm pretty sure that we have many similarities and many things in common. So Skopje and Tbilisi.
Yes, the same as you said, like you started to build first bridges. Also, like Skopje was just on the right side, on the river. So the first thing that people start to connect the old bazaar and the new city was building like the bridge that is very famous, like stone bridge. And after that were made like many bridges to connect the left and the right side of the city.
Yes, yeah, it's interesting to find what do we have in common, but also we need to, I mean, that's also the goal of this workshop, to also find a way how to improve our cities, because we have same problems, let's say, similar problems, and then maybe we can learn from each other. It's not only just, okay, we have this in common, stop. You know, like, that's the point, to go forward and to flourish the cities together, let's say.
Agreed.
Yes, okay, thank you. Do we have some comment for Tamara presentation?
I just wanted to say that I was really impressed with Tamara's works. It's for me, it's also interesting how she's connecting these ideas of collectiveness and consciousness to the city scale, which is also like important to read me as well. Also, Alex, thank you very much for like in its every level of development. I think it was really interesting for everyone, even for us Georgians. Thank you all. That was my comment.
Thank you.
Ilya, you want to say something?
If there's time, we would like to share a little project that we did. Tamara?
Okay.
If
So,
Tamara is here?
Yep,
Yes.
I'm here. Do you see the share screen?
Yes.
Okay, so this is a project that we did together with Dila for Air of Harmony. So, you know, the space can be described with two structural descriptions. The first one is the reflecting layout of surfaces in the physical world, and the second one, which is the semantic description, which I talked previously with the space syntax analysis. So we wanted to incorporate the observers also in the environment, and how they should better understand the environment. So this is the plot design, actually the layout of place in Skopje is the governmental building in Skopje. Just a moment to show you. So this is the building with its, it has like 6 very interesting quadra structures that are pavilions. And on this location, we defined the scene as an interactive space perceived as pattern on which geometrical shapes rise and became transformable objects used daily for relaxing or skating or just enjoying of the citizens. So here...
1 second, sir. Tamara, maybe we should show just a picture of the building so they know what we're talking about.
Just a moment. We don't have it here.
Yeah, just open a new...
Yeah.
So this is the government building where in the beginning of 90s, the skaters were, it was like a gathering place for skaters. Then the new government came, banned the skating there, put a fence around the building.
Yep.
And then when the old government came back, they called us like, hey, this is open for the public. You can have your time here. So we thought about doing a project here that's gonna invite more people in this space. So this is the project.
So this is the look of the old governmental building in Skopje and the new one.
This is the new
facade.
Yeah,
yes,
the new
it's
facade.
The same building.
Yeah.
Just the facade is changed. Okay.
Which is falling apart. Plus.
No way.
Yes.
It is the same building.
So the inspiration was. So the inspiration was all buildings.
Yeah, we had one very crazy government, very woody government, Yeah, who decided to change facades of few buildings. Unfortunately, it didn't last longer to change all that they wanted to change. So now we have this kind of neoclassical, whatever style buildings that previously were modern buildings. Yeah, this is also about the feeling people have about these modern buildings. This is why I asked Alex. Yeah. Continue, Tamara. Sorry.
Okay, so no worries. So this is the site pattern, the layout of the building. So we found the basic squares there in the ground floor, and the window also elements of the previous building, not the new facade. And we combined with the tapestry patterns, which are further transformed and elevated. So you can see here, this is one of our tapestry elements. And further, we just designed it with geometrical shapes, and then with replicating, and came with a new form, which is this one, and which can be actually made of different elements, triangles that are further developed as pyramids that can be combined together or separated as different elements. So in the yard, which is this area here of the governmental building, which is also a public space that we can use. Now the fences are also pushed away, although the pushing away of the fences didn't mean that we as citizens would use the building. So this was one proposal of how we can use it. So we just replicated the existing patterns that we found on the site and made the new element. You can see it here on the floor plans, how it can be combined together, separated with a couple of meters, so it can be used also for skateboarding, or also use different elements in space for relaxing of people. And the axonometric views of the design. So this was the final stage actually of the design that we wanted to implement, and probably someday we will.
Cool. Yeah, you will. You don't need a lot of money for this.
Yep.
Okay.
Can you clarify? It's this modernistic building was transformed in something like fake classic design facade. After that was changed, and they invited some artists and local activists to develop some idea for the building. This is the story.
Tamara?
I didn't hear anything. I'm really sorry. No.
The question is,
sorry.
Yeah.
Should I repeat?
Yes, please.
I just wanted to get here what was the process behind the building.
Natalia, there is we don't hear it. There is like interruption.
Actually, I've got the question. Yeah, if you got, yes, go, Sarah.
Okay, the question is there, this building was, there was a fence on, and then there was put facade on, and then with one government, and then another government came and removed the fence, and now it's open this public space to the space around the building to public. Tamara, is this a question?
Yeah, so first in the communist regime, actually, it was the old building, in that time, you know, the modernist building. Then the new government came, yes, made the new facade. Of course,
the old new facade?
The old, yeah. And then the new government wanted actually to, the newest one that we have actually, remove the fence around the building, so it will be used as public space.
So the first initial idea from when it was built in 70s,
yes,
the idea of this building was that the public space around the government would be used by citizens, and
yes,
it was used.
Like a lot more than now.
Yes, people were coming in, and then this neoclassical government came, who decided that they should put fences, they should make it more representative, the building, so they put this facade, etc., etc. And then now another government came who decided to remove the fence, but actually they didn't remove the facade, because now the building is ruined anyway, and this will cost a lot of money, so it stays like this, and it's kind of, so now you still maybe don't feel comfortable to go inside. It's a bit like, I don't know.
No, you don't actually feel comfortable to go inside at all.
Plus,
Exactly,
after a month or two, they changed their opinion, so now they're kicking the people out of that place because it's private. So it was like 2 months of it.
There is a lot of police there, and etc. And so you don't feel comfortable to go there and sit.
Yes. So actually, moving of the visual boundaries doesn't mean moving of the physical boundaries.
Exactly.
And vice versa. Yeah.
And what is the function of the building now? This complex?
Governmental building. Yeah.
Okay. So function is same as it was.
Yes.
Okay.
They just covered it like many buildings in the center.
Just more beautiful.
So this is not the only
it's not the only. We were protesting back then. We were doing a lot of initiatives, but the government was so strong, and even a little bit like, how to say, not democracy was not the main thing at that moment. But we succeeded to save one building, Gototsa. I mean, we will show you next year when you will come. Now, not to distract people with so many information. But we succeeded to save one building because we were hugging it, like making a big chain of people, like hanging hands and like huge circle. And there was a referendum about the building, and then we succeeded not to cover it with this. It was a small victory, but that's the process of the city. Yeah.
Also, the post office building was kind of saved, but they burned it after that somehow to fire.
They were making fires, so like there was a fire, we have to reconstruct it or something like that. So very nasty games, let's say.
It's very interesting how politically and economically and like in this cultural way we have some kind of similar stories, because we have so many similar events, like we were trying to protect the place and we could do nothing because the politicians were very strong. So it would be interesting to discuss it maybe next time when we are here or you are there.
Yes. And how we can learn. That's the thing. We should make a cult around these buildings that people really understand the beauty. And it is such a hard work. Like, so many people should organize events around it. So many different activities. So people start. For example, this Gototsa building that we protected. All the photo shoots about fashion are now taken there. So people started feeling the building as something important. And I'm happy about that. Even though now it becomes a little bit boring because everybody's taking photos there. But anyway, so it's about all the culture should push and put a stress about the beauty of these buildings in different from different angles, so to make people understand the beauty of it, because people see it as just boring and ugly, and that's a big problem.
Yeah.